Welcome back to another edition of Ballaholics, the show for those who simply can't get enough of basketball. You guys at home are in for a special treat today because it is Ballaholics' first ever interview. We're going to interview someone. He is a former collegiate basketball player at Brewton-Parker College, where he played for the Brewton-Parker Barons. He had a sports show behind the Barons where he looked into the stories of student athletes, and now he is transferring to Georgia Southern University to pursue his dream in sports broadcasting. Without further ado, let's give it up, Jared Denk.
How you doing, Samuel? I'm glad to be on the show. Definitely looking forward to this. I know we've been talking about this for a good while and finally able to do a one-on-one, just me and you.
There we go. I'm super excited, Jared. It's the first ever interview. So I'm telling you right now, I'm telling the viewers at home, if I mess up at all, don't put it on me. Don't put it on me. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So Jared, if you can just quickly introduce yourself to our viewers and just tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, my name is Jared Denk. I am a sports broadcaster at Georgia Southern University. I will be going into my junior year in the fall here, and I'm originally from McDonough, Georgia, the Stockbridge area. Went to Eagles Landing Christian Academy for all of my whole high school, elementary, middle school, all those years. And then after that, I signed a scholarship to play in the NCCAA at Brewton-Parker College, as you mentioned earlier, for 2 years. And after 2 years of about 14 plus years of playing basketball, I decided to hang it up and said, hey, we're going to put on the headset and start broadcasting the games. And since then, it's been a dream job I've wanted to do ever since I was a little kid. And I'm just so happy that I'm able to be in the opportunity here to be able to follow my dream.
That's great. That's amazing. So you played basketball, previously for 14 years, and now you're transitioning to being a sports broadcaster. And that's amazing. So I'm actually curious because I think it's pretty interesting, and for our viewers, what's it like being on the other side? Because as a player, I feel like you're always playing, and maybe you get a different perspective when you're actually a sports broadcaster at the games.
Right. As a broadcaster, I personally was the type that would try and have a picture painted in your head, because there were some games that we would have to do radio broadcasts, and I was along the lines of, okay, let's make sure the audience has the best viewpoint or best vantage for the game. So it's a little bit more of, what you're doing as a broadcaster because you've been in that situation. As a basketball player, you know what it's like to have 5 seconds left on the shot clock. You got to knock down a jump shot from the free throw line. That's just the way it goes. You know how the pressure is in certain situations. You know what it's like to be put in different scenarios in different parts of the game, and it translates over even more to broadcasting, to where you're able to put those quote unquote like thoughts in your head out and put them into words.
Of course. And actually, you spoke about free throws before, and this is a question I have, and a couple of my friends actually, I told them I was going to interview you, and I had to ask this question. What is the worst free throw distraction you have ever seen?
Worst free throw distraction? I'd say whenever we were playing against Bethel University up in Bethel, Tennessee, we had, there was the whole marching band was behind behind the section that we were shooting the free throws at in the one goal, and there was a couple of them that made the trek down to the other side of the stadium, and they started blowing their trumpets and everything, and they had the signs, and I was like, man, this is back like March Madness again. And I knocked down both my free throws that game, but I was like, the marching band did not make me miss. I was happy. But, whenever you train enough and practice enough, you don't miss those free throws regardless of what the distractions are. But that was probably the most intense that we've ever had. But I know I've seen a couple of them where there'd be people like having like the wavy fingers and all that, trying to get in your head and distract them. But you just got to get up there, take a couple breaths, and knock them down.
Yeah, and I go to, I'm from Binghamton, we go to Binghamton University, and I went to some of the games, and they're like singing the ABCs. And I'm like, wow, I don't know, if I was the player, I might miss the free throw, honestly, but it's great.
Wait a second, they missed a letter.
I feel like as like you said before, like when you're practicing, you condition your body almost to muscle memory, where you can make the free throw muscle memory. So I think that's really cool. Also, as a player, I was curious to see, because obviously our viewers watch the NBA, but just to get some insight of what it's like for a player when you're playing in a game, how would you compare being home versus being away?
I think the biggest thing being at home I know for us at Brewton-Parker, whenever I went there, it was, that you have the support no matter what you do. If you win, your whole entire community and the whole college is going to be supporting you. If you lose, they're going to say, all right, dust that one off. You guys got the next one. It's that mindset of we want to see you succeed, and we want to see you succeed as best as possible. And if you fail, then hey, dust yourself off. There's always another game. And that's been the biggest thing. But on the road, I'll tell you one thing, them home fans are vicious. They will literally do anything and everything to get under your skin, whether that's like calling you names, saying, hey, your shoe's untied, to just try and get a distraction, or any little thing that they can. Like whenever you're touching the ball, if there's a certain player that they know is really good, they'll start like booing or something. As soon as the ball leaves his hand, it's just go dead silent. And it's like those little things that is a mental game with the side of basketball that not a lot of people really understand whenever they're playing it. But once, if you're outside of just watching the game, it's huge.
Mm-hmm. And as a player, like, how do you control yourself? Like, if someone's calling you these names and really trying to get under your skin, like, is it just something that you get used to after a while, or do you never really get used to it?
You don't really try and pay too much attention to it. It's more you're there to do a job. I know that's something that I want to say it was Urban Meyer would always say whenever Ohio State was getting off the bus. All right, boys, business trip. And that's it. That's your mindset. You're on a business trip. You're there to do a job. And it doesn't matter what anybody else is saying. You're there to do what you're supposed to do, and that's get the win.
That's a great mindset to have, I feel like. And also, I want to get another perspective as a player. We see these stories with NBA coaches or just coaches in general and player relationships, and I feel like those are huge. So, like, from a player's perspective, what do you believe like makes a good coach?
A good coach characteristic, I'd say, is probably relatability with their players. If you're able to be vulnerable with your players, obviously not every player is the same. You have you have players coming in from all walks of life. You have some people that had been given everything, and you have a lot of players that have had a gun, had a shooting gun, and a bunch of other equipment stuff that they're able to use. Then you have other players that literally were raised playing on a peach basket because that's all they had in their front yard. It's everybody that comes together for the unity of putting a ball in a basket. And that's the biggest thing with me as looking for coaching standards. You got to make sure that, hey, if a coach has that desire to want to have the players all in the same mindset of, hey, let's get better, hey, let's continue to improve, that's going to be the sign of a successful program and a very successful coach.
That's a great answer. I think that I agree with you. I think 100%. I think the coach needs to be relatable to the players, so the players actually can look up to the coach in a way. Because I feel like sometimes when coaches aren't really relating, it gets a little difficult. And I know, like in the NBA, of course, too, many coaches are actually former players. So they're former players and then they become coaches. And in your case, like obviously you're not a coach, but you're a former player and now you're becoming a sports broadcaster. So I think that jump is really cool. Just to go on, I was curious. Obviously, I know you. I'm pretty sure you broadcast soccer, basketball, and the softball. Did I miss one, or was those three?
I did women's basketball whenever we weren't playing. Women's basketball, baseball, football. I'm going to be doing football. I did football my whole senior year at Eagles Landing Christian, all the way up into the state championship game, which was covered by obviously the local news company. But
Wow.
other than that, no, I've pretty much covered everything except hockey. Obviously, in Atlanta, Georgia, there's not really that much hockey to cover, but I've pretty much done almost every game that's possible. Done lacrosse, done women's lacrosse before, and a couple other little sports mixed in between.
Out of all the games that you cover, which is your favorite? You have like a personal favorite that you really enjoy covering the
I'd
most?
probably say football. I don't know what it is. I played football for a, almost all of high school, a couple years of middle school, and just it was something that I just grew up watching, and I just enjoyed calling football more. I just a Pittsburgh Steeler fan growing up. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a couple Steeler logos back there. But born and raised a Steeler fan, and it's just been something that I just loved ever since I was a little kid, just watching football and listening and broadcasting football.
That's awesome. And by the way, viewers, I made my first mistake because I meant to mention this in the beginning, but you guys should follow Jared Denk on Instagram and follow his story as he continues to pursue his, dream job of sports journal, broadcasting. At Den Kinator. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
Dinkinator. It's like the
Dinkinator.
Terminator, but just Dinkinator. Yeah.
So DENKINATOR. Definitely give that Instagram page a follow. Good stuff on there for sure. And yeah, that's really cool. So you played football in high school. So did you play in that championship game that was widely covered?
I played in no, my senior year I stopped playing. I had the decision to play basketball my senior year or football, and I chose basketball obviously. But no, I have 2 state championships with 5 Pete because the high school I go to has won back to back to back to back to back state championships. The first in all of Georgia to do that in any division of high school football, and I have 2 of those championship rings. But then the third one, that was my whole entire broadcasting year, so I enjoy doing that.
That's absolutely incredible. And before you said, so your senior year, you had to choose between basketball and football. Many players, I feel like, even in the NBA, such as Carmelo Anthony, he had to choose in high school baseball or basketball. So how do you go about making such a large decision like that?
I think my biggest thing was not only my faith was involved, that I was like, God, if you want me to do this, I'll go with what you want me to do. I was 6'8" at the time. They had me playing tight end, and occasionally they'd have me playing fullback as a stretch fullback. And I was maybe 210 pounds, if that. So I think, and I was beginning to have a bunch of knee problems, so I was going to need to get some more knee braces, but I wouldn't want to have to get chop blocked every single time if I was playing on the offensive line. So I was thinking, if I really want to do this, I got to put a lot more time into investing into my body and making sure that my knees aren't going to buckle or I'm not going to break something in doing a regular practice. And of course, that comes with the everyday practicing with basketball. But I think the biggest thing that sold me for basketball was that's something that I've done ever since I was a little kid. I was taught in my driveway by my mom how to do a 1-2 step layup. That was it. That's basic fundamentals. And I'm thinking, if I can do this and get paid to do have a scholarship, man, what's going to stop me from doing that? And ever since then, it was been basketball to choose ever since my senior year.
That's really cool. Like the fact that, you were a little kid, you've been playing basketball, you were playing ever since you were a little kid. I feel like that was a good decision. That was a cool decision, to stick with, your kid almost and continue to do that. And you're even doing that now. I feel like, still pursuing this, sports broadcasting career, because I feel like not many people, you have players in college that they transition to actual jobs. You have, not like actual, but like, more like business or like, these
More
strict
like
rigid
white collar. Yeah.
jobs. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like business or, all these other kind of jobs, but it's cool that, you're sticking to sports broadcasting. I think that's really cool. Just a couple more questions for you, actually. So in terms of the sports broadcasting, so I was just curious. So you were a player and a broadcaster. If you had one piece of advice for a player that you see something, as a broadcaster, that you wish more players did maybe, or maybe saw, like, is there any kind of advice you would have for them?
I would say don't have what your ideals are as a player translate off of the court. Have them be solely in what you find as, hey, this is me. This is what I find my identity in. Don't have it be a little switch you flip. Have that be that leadership characteristic, not only be on the court, but be off the court as well. If you see somebody isn't being treated right, hey, stand up for them. Do those little leadership things that are not only on the basketball court, but off the court as well. But I would say, other than that, I feel like a lot of people do the look at me aspect of basketball or any real sport for that matter. But I think it's the more subtle players like the offensive linemen who don't get as much credit as like the Patrick Mahomes or the Lamar Jacksons of the league, but are just down there chopping wood and grinding every single day, not looking for the, hey, look at me. It's just the continuous working and just getting better every day.
That's really cool. And that was actually going into my next question where I want to talk about like as a perspective, as a player, as a former player, like the locker room. So it's not just on the court, it's what you do off the court. And you sort of talked about, the importance of culture, I feel like. And I think that's really important. I think that you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're a star player, for example, and you don't do great stuff off the court, I mean, it's not going to be great for your team. So you want to be a mutually beneficial relationship for you and your team in that matter. So you talked about football before, and I know you're a Steelers fan. So how did that start for our viewers?
My whole family is originally from Pittsburgh, West Mifflin, Brentwood area, or Carrick area, as my dad would correct me every time I say it. But growing up, I mean, I didn't really have a choice. They said, "Hey, you're going to be a Steeler fan," and ever since then, I had a terrible towel in my hand, waving it on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursday nights. So, I mean, obviously, I grew up watching the Steelers win their first Super Bowl in 2005. Well, at least whenever I was born, they had four up until that point, and then they won one in 2005, and then the next one in 2008 with a win over the Arizona Cardinals with the infamous Santonio Holmes catch in the back of the end zone. But ever since then, I mean, I remember growing up in my living room just watching Steeler games and enjoying, hey, whenever they won, I know the next day at school I'd be able to have something to talk about. Whenever they didn't win, it'd be a little bit more quiet. But it's just something that sports has with me. I've just always enjoyed watching sports, and I can even attest as a little kid, and that's really how I even got into broadcasting as a little kid was our volume cable, or not the volume cable, our speaker cable upstairs on the TV stopped working. So I thought to myself, gee, somebody's got to be doing these games. And that was obviously in like 2008, 2009, whenever the Pittsburgh Penguins were on their way to the Stanley Cup. So I would try and write down the names of all the players that I could memorize, and I would look up the rest of them and write them down. And while the game was going on, I was doing the games and just trying to be like, okay, since I can't hear them, I'm going to start doing it myself. And ever since then, it's just been something I loved.
That's so cool. That's awesome. So and who knows? Like who would know? Like that's a story like of how someone's going into sports broadcasting. That's an incredible story. The fact that it didn't work. That's really cool. And as far as being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and not having a choice, Jared, I can completely relate to you because I'm a suffering Knicks fan. And here's the
Ooh,
thing,
those
Jared.
Knicks.
Jared, you said that when the Steelers win, you can go into school the next day and be happy. As a Knicks fan, you cannot do that. You can never be excited because the Knicks are never winning. So it's very
Yeah.
exciting for me personally.
See,
On
and the
that.
thing is, I know obviously you're a New York Knicks fan. I'm a huge Kristaps Porzingis fan. So trust me, whenever like I was one of the only people. I had a buddy of mine that was actually at the draft whenever Porzingis got drafted, and he was FaceTiming me. I was like, dude, this guy's going to be something special. Obviously, 2 seasons ago, coming back from that tear in his knee. But I mean, I just saw something in Porzingis whenever he was in New York. I'm like, this guy is going to be something special. Obviously, the unicorn, you don't see very many 7'3", other than like Boban Marjanovic, 7'3", 7'4" guys that can not only knock down 3-pointers, but have a versatility around the basket and have a soft touch that you only find with maybe guys that are 6'6", 6'7", maybe 6'9", if you're lucky with obviously Kevin Durant. I don't think he's 6'9", but he's a little bit taller than that once they figured out with the whole measurements. But you don't find that soft touch among big players anymore. It's more just back to the basket and just hope you throw up a shot that goes in.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like the NBA has sort of like slowly and gradually been evolving into more like big men shooting more threes, being more versatile. And I think the closest player, in my opinion, to like Porzingis sort of reminds me of Kevin Durant in a way that they're both super lengthy, super tall, and can shoot over opponents. So if they have the hot hand, like no one can block them because they're so tall.
Exactly. It's that put that cookie in the basket. I mean, put your hand in the cookie jar. I mean, I'm 6'10", so trust me, I can relate with that a little bit with the being able to see over players. But it's definitely a good advantage to have whenever you're trying to see, hey, this is what I want to see on the court. Can I see an open man and be able to pass it to him? Not only that, but if you're playing against a guy that's, well, in the NBA about 6 foot, that's probably, I mean, the average in the NBA is about 6'6", if I'm not mistaken. But you're 7'3" looking down on a 6'6" guy. You're not going to really have that much chance to miss an open player that you're trying to pass the ball to.
Exactly. And actually, would like if you had to compare your game, or like maybe when you were younger, a player in the NBA that you looked up to in a way, you tried modeling your game after them, or perhaps you're just a huge fan, you're inspired by them. Would that be like which player would that be for you?
To be honest, growing up with around Atlanta, I was always a big Atlanta Hawks guy. So I would say probably Zaza Pachulia. I mean, that was the reason. I mean, and I know he gets a bad rap now because of all the stuff with with causing injuries and all that. But no, growing up, I mean, that was something that I just enjoyed. I was that anchor on our team that you could throw the ball into, and I put up a little hook shot or try and block somebody and just be like that little hype guy. That would not little hype guy, but that hype guy that would try and get our team motivated no matter what I could try and do. But then as college moved on, as I've gotten to more college, I would probably say I'd probably model my game after Boban Marjanovic. Obviously, I don't know if you can really tell, but I have big hands. And that was something I utilized, was a little hook shot that was just over top of my shoulder. I mean, freshman year, that was what I utilized. And then my sophomore year, I was more of a defensive player. I would try and get as many blocks as I could and just stand there and build a wall, as my old head coach, Stephen Birchfield, would say. Just stand there, have your arms up, and don't let them get around you. So that was what I was trying to model my game around.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Jared. And I guess my last question for you would be, just to discuss to our viewers and, your future goals, your future, your dream of being a sports broadcaster. Just talk a little bit about that.
I would say my future goal obviously is not my own. It's what God sees me to be able to do. But I would say my biggest opportunity would to be either work at ESPN or NBC or NBCSN as a major broadcasting company, being able to do play-by-play broadcasting for really any major sporting event. I'd be happy if I have to even cover underwater basket weaving. I know that's obviously not that big of a sport, and that's not even a sport, that's just a joke. But I guess my biggest thing is if I could be able to go into a job, which isn't even really a job to me, it'd just be getting to do what I love every day. It'd be something great, even if that's calling football every day, calling basketball, calling hockey. Either way, it's just something I'd be able to enjoy. You get a great seat, you get to go in for free, which, to be honest, that's probably the best part of it. You get to work with some great people, and you get to have fun the entire day, just talking sports and being able to enjoy the game you love.
Exactly, and that's just what we were talking about before, where these people I was talking about before, how like players sometimes they settle into like jobs, these actual jobs, but like they don't actually go for the dream. They don't go for the full send almost to achieve their dream. And
Exactly.
it's great that you're doing that, and it's something that I'm looking to do as well. So it's great for the both of us. And Jared, I really appreciate you taking the time to join our show. Definitely offered some great insight to our viewers. It was a great interview. And make sure, if you guys haven't already, make sure to follow Jared Denk on Instagram to continue following his story at Denkinator. Did I say it right? Say it again.
Dinkinator, yeah, Dinkinator, same difference. It's all good. Well, hey, Sam, I definitely appreciate you guys letting me come on the show and share a little bit of my story, and I definitely enjoyed being on.
Awesome, Jared. Thank you.
Absolutely.